Well, today is Friday, August the 9th of 2024, and we welcome you to our Chapter 49 podcast. Chapter 49 represents most IRS employees in the state of Indiana. My name is Larry Lannan. I'm a volunteer and a retiree and do communications for Chapter 49. If you like this podcast, we would suggest that you subscribe to it. You can do so on YouTube, the video version, by just going to YouTube. Go to Duncan Giles 2845. There's more than one. That's Duncan Giles 2845. And you can subscribe and get a heads up every time we have a new podcast that we put on YouTube. If you listen to the audio version, and most people do, just whatever platform you're using, if you have the option, go ahead and subscribe there, like us, write a comment, whatever you can do, and just let other people know if you have the link. You may have the link that Duncan sends out. Just spread the word if you think there are other people that might like this podcast. And now, refreshed after some time off, we welcome back our chapter president, Duncan Giles.
Thanks, Larry. It's always good to be here. Yep, it was good time off, but good to be back.
Well, yeah, you've been back 4 days, so you were off for more than a week, and now I don't know about you, but particularly when I was a manager, anytime I had to come back from vacation, the inbox was a challenge. I assume the email inbox was a challenge for you as well as returning from your vacation.
It was, but you just battle through it and whittle it down, and I've got it now back down to under control and current, which I'm very happy about.
Only took you 4 days, right?
A little bit less than that, I'm proud to say. Thank you very much.
It's a joke, of course.
I,
Of course, we didn't have a podcast last week. Our last podcast was a little more than 2 weeks ago, and we had Dan Casper on, and we had a lot of people listen and watch that podcast. He had a lot of good information for us on some new OPM regs on higher graded duties. If you haven't watched or listened to that, go back and do that. It was a very good podcast. And he also talked about telework. We're going to talk a little bit about telework today and some of the attacks it has undergone within the federal sector. So let's go ahead and get started with our podcast subjects today. Of course, it's always important to know that you will actually have a job. You can go to work and there is a budget in place. Well, the budget for the fiscal year that we're in now expires at the end of September. Of course, October 1 is supposed to be the beginning of the new fiscal year. I think I can count on one hand in recent years the number of times we have had a budget in place on October 1st, the new fiscal year. Normally, we have continuing resolutions. Sadly, we occasionally have government shutdowns, which are sad, and we do our best to avoid them. Sometimes they do happen. So, Duncan, and again, we don't want to make this a political podcast, so anybody can listen anytime, but it's a fact that there is an election looming, which sometimes has an impact on how this goes. So, just as a fact of the matter, it's sitting out there. So, the best hope we have is that to be a continuing resolution, at least until after the election, when hopefully a deal can be struck for the budget coming up in the next fiscal year. What are you hearing? What are the NTEU legislative people saying, and what are you in fact seeing in terms of what to expect as we reach this budget deadline, which is less than 2 months away?
yeah, people say, well, it's 2 months away. It's too far to worry about. It's not a big deal. Well, first off, you have to factor in that the entirety of Congress is on their August break. Don't you wish we all got an August break? So they won't reconvene until September, which leads to about a month. Now, the House has passed several appropriations bills. None of them would pass the Senate with either the low amounts that they've given or the what are called poison pills in there. The Senate has passed most of theirs through their appropriations committee, but not to the full Senate floor. So what we're looking at is the usual September dance of, okay, what are we going to do? At this point, between what we're reading, what we're hearing from NTU National folks, the best result we're going to get is a continuing resolution. I don't think it's in anybody's best interest, either party, to shut down the government during this time of year in a political, in an election year. But stranger things, unfortunately, have happened. I hope that doesn't come to that, but it's a possibility. And then there's the discussion, well, how long should the continuing resolution be? Some people want to make it through December. Some people want to make it to the end of December. Some people want to, get it done, get the appropriations done sooner so a new administration, whatever political party it is, doesn't have to deal with this when they first come into office. That's the first thing they have to fight. And we haven't even really discussed the debt limit that's coming up as well. That's rearing its ugly head. So it's all going to be playing in there. So right now, we're just saying stay tuned. There's not going to be much news for the next 3.5 weeks or so. But after that, it's, buckle in, because it's going to be a bumpy ride, as it is usually, as you alluded to, Larry.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, we've talked about this before, Duncan, the thing to keep in mind is that the Senate, the House, and the President all had very different ideas of how they want the budget to be. And of course, we're going to have a different president in January. It will not be Joe Biden. So we know that. So there'll be another president coming in at that time. Will that have an impact on the budget discussions? So I think, and on top of all that, the House has been more draconian in passing budgets than the Senate has been. And Joe Biden, our current president, has been much more aligned with the Senate version, which is not spending a lot of money, but it's some increases in most of the budgets for the agencies, where the House is just kind of taking just cutting a lot. So there's a lot to be reconciled once all these budgets. What usually happens in a normal setting, or what is normal today, right? In a normal setting is that the House passes a budget, the Senate passes a budget. There's a conference committee, and the president's budget director is in that conference committee with the House and Senate negotiators, and you hammer out a compromise deal. When you have government shutdowns, that's when you cannot get that compromise deal.
Exactly. And just to give folks an idea of where we're at, the president proposed an increase in the IRS budget. The Senate passed in their committee, passed a bill giving the IRS the same amount of money that we had for fiscal 25 that we got in fiscal 24. The House voted to cut the IRS by $2 billion. That's with a B, $1 billion, which is about a darn near about an 18% cut, which would be absolutely a bloodbath for the IRS if that were to occur. I don't anticipate that happening. So you can see that there's that wide dichotomy, and it's going to have to come to some sort of agreement, as you said, Larry, for it to finally pass. And that's unfortunately going to take a while. So the best we can hope for, like I said originally, was a continuing resolution.
So we'll keep an eye on this podcast. And also, let me put a plug in for our Facebook page. You can go to Facebook, like or follow our Facebook page. Just search under Chapter 49, exact phrase, NTEU Chapter 49 Indiana, because if you don't have it exactly like that, there's some old accounts out there that haven't been updated for years. So you NTEU Chapter 49 Indiana, use that exact phrase in Facebook, and you can like or follow our Facebook page and find our updates. We try to update when there is news. We try not to inundate you, but when there is news, we do try to let you know. And we also provide links to these both video and audio versions of our podcast once it is up and ready to be posted.
And Larry, I do want to give a plug to you for keeping it. You are our Facebook administrator as well, and you keep it very well updated, very current. Stuff that's happening, stuff that's breaking, that's of interest to federal employees is on there. So I would urge folks to, if you're not following it and you want the latest news as to what's going on, to follow that NTU Chapter 49 Indiana page, because Larry does a great job with it.
Well, thank you for that. I do try. And, also I would encourage you to sign up as a member on ntu.org. If you haven't already, sign up for there's some great newsletters that come out from our national office as well. So there's great communication tools available. Our chapter does this on Facebook, and get lots of email updates from our national union. So there are a lot of communication tools we as a union try to utilize to keep you all up to date. Well, I mentioned we're going to talk about telework. We discussed it with Dan Casper, one of our top attorneys and top management officials, or officials, I should say. I don't want to use the word management, officials at NTEU. And we talked about telework and how telework has been under attack. We have these people in Congress who give us data, give us data. Well, whenever time we give them data, they ignore it because it seems to tell them what they don't want to hear, which is that it's working very well. Overall, I mean, there are always issues, but overall, this has been a very successful program, not just for the employees, but for, as Dan mentioned 2 weeks ago, the government itself, in terms of being able to be thriftier on the office space. Although, as Duncan will say, that hasn't always been managed the right way, but we'll leave that for another day. A senator from Louisiana has proposed this: a 30% cut in pay for people who telework. So his idea, yeah, you can telework, but we're not going to pay you as much. If somebody in the private sector tried to do that, their entire staff would quit the next day. Why any senator would want to do this for the federal government is beyond me, but that proposal is out there. We don't think it's going anywhere. But I think we want to highlight this, if for no other reason, Duncan, just to let people know that some of these crazy ideas are being surfaced in the Congress that probably won't go anywhere. Don't be afraid or scared. Be aware, understand that this stuff's out there. But, NTU is going to fight tooth and nail to keep anything like that from happening. And I don't think Senator Cassidy from Louisiana has a lot of support from his colleagues in either party to do a thing like that. But give me your reaction to what Senator Cassidy from Louisiana has proposed here.
Yeah, this is all because, he believes, again, you've got a certain contingent of politicians that believe that telework is bad, that people are not working, that the American taxpayers aren't getting service because of telework, which, as you mentioned in the studies, is pure malarkey, for lack of words that I'd rather use that I won't, because, you never know. Children might be listening to this just to cure insomnia. But, his thought is, well, if somebody's getting Chicago locality pay, but they're located in Indianapolis, well, we should just make anybody teleworking, because of things like that they just get rest of the U.S. pay, and that could be up to a 30% cut. Well, first off, I can only speak for IRS and other agencies I know that NTU represents that I've talked to, my counterparts across there. Everybody pretty well knows what the rules are. Everybody knows that the rules are enforced, and management does a semi-decent job, depending upon the agency, of making sure those rules are followed. And, if you're not in the locality area where your POD is, you shouldn't be getting that locality pay, no matter where you're, where you're teleworking from. Every agency has different rules depending upon their contract. At the IRS, you have to be within, a couple 100 miles of your telework location to do that. So this kind of grandstanding, and that's exactly what it is. It's grandstanding, as you said, Larry. It's not going to go anywhere, but it's just to get sound bites, get headlines. Is just, let's have folks in Congress solve real problems and real issues. That's what they're there for. Pass budgets, pass bills that matter to the American people, not just, like it's been the last 20, 30 years on both sides. Just go for, whatever they can think of that can get attention. Let's actually do the real work. And, proposals like this are not the real work, and it's not something that's either feasible and or practical.
And this is not the only example of telework coming under attack, and we expect
Right.
there will be more of these. So just understand what's out there. We're fighting every day. Our staff, your dues pay for a great lobbying staff on Capitol Hill. We have a
Yep.
terrific legislative department. I'll put them up against anybody in the private sector or the public sector. They do we've had Katasai Benga, the leader of that legislative department, on our podcast a couple of times. And she's always, just listening to her, they're on top of everything and doing their very best to put our best foot forward and provide the best uh, lobbying effort to make sure that the interests of federal employees are considered every time the Congress is set to take an action. So, I think there's a lot of angst around. I've said this before about telework because of all these attacks, these congressional comments we hear. We feel the data is on our side. When we have these senators and members of the House saying we want data, we are not afraid of that. Let's get the data rolled up, because every time we have had data to provide them, it's bolstering our view that telework is a great idea for the government and for employees. Those of you who telework on a regular basis, not going to be taken away. We have a contract, and that contract is enforceable. And even the commissioner of IRS has made it clear that, well, he may change some things for non-bargaining unit people or management people, but as far as he's concerned, that contract will be enforced for the bargaining unit. So you still have the rights in the contract, which requires a minimum of 2 days in the office for every pay period, which is normally a 2-week period. Anything more on that, Duncan?
Nope, I think you've encapsulated it very well.
Let's move on to something else that's created quite a stir. This is within the taxpayer service, or is it accounts management, or do we have a new name today? I don't know, but
it's accounts management in taxpayer services.
Oh no, we put them both in there. Okay, we don't want. Next time we do, it'll be account services, taxpayers. We'll make it another couple of lines. Anyway, one issue we've been tracking very carefully is the fact that we have our remote sites, such as Indianapolis. We're not the only one. There are many remote sites that are not part of a campus that answer phone calls once the tax filing season's over. There's not quite the demand. There's still demand, but not quite the demand that happens during the tax filing season. So one suggestion has always been that people in those sites, with the technology we have to scan and all of the ways to do this, that people can, what we used to call paper inventory. It's not always on paper even anymore, but it's inventory that has to be worked. Normally it's accounts issue, will be accounts issues, need adjustments, or something needs to be done. The campuses have normally done this with their large staffs, but the remote sites, okay, why can't we have some of this work? Boy, NTU is totally in favor of this. We think that the people working in the remote sites are also in favor. They'd love to do this work. They want to be trained to do it and get the experience to do it well. The problem we had, and those of you who are working this and went through this training know it better than I, the training was woefully inadequate based on the feedback NTUs received nationwide, including our people in Indianapolis. We've had 2 grievance meetings so far. The first grievance meeting after the grievance was filed, actually based on what Doreen Greenwald has said to the chapter presidents, the management listened and said, well, maybe there's something we need to do here. Then they brought in the person who has just recently been taken over accounts management taxpayer services. And her response was, oh, everything's fine. We're getting positive feedback, So now I think we're at the point that, okay, IRS, give us a final recommendation. We think we're going to have to go to an arbitrator over this. So NTU is doing everything we can to make sure you people who feel like you've been thrown to the wolves with this work, you've been given the work and you really don't have the training or the coaching or the backup to be able to get the work done. We are working very hard to help you. So Duncan, I'd like your perspective on all this.
Yeah, this is just one example where chapter presidents like myself raise up issues to NTU National directly, and they hear it, they collate this information, say, okay, let us reach out to IRS. IRS at first was responsive and heard this, and then, like you said, we've got a new director of accounts management in taxpayer services. And when she came out with the reply that, no, we think everything is going fine, that it's not a problem, it reminded me a lot of Kevin Bacon in the movie Animal House, with his arms up going, remain calm, all is well, where he ends up getting run over by a mob. And that's the same type of thing I'm seeing here, because not only is it happening in Indianapolis, but it's happening all over the country. I talked to my counterparts all over the country about this, and every single remote call site that's doing this is having the same issue. The training has been inadequate. That's been too short. It's been disjointed. And it's not the fault of the service centers. The service centers are trying, but they're stretched thin. So they don't have people to do the instruction because they're trying to get their paper done. And so it's just a snowball effect. And to have executives say, everything is just fine and it's moving along, these folks do not want us to go to arbitration, because we will go ahead and provide example after example after example from every single remote site about how poor this is. Just this week, I'm on a particular team, and this particular issue came up, and the executive was asking about this and asking for specific examples. And myself and another chapter president with a remote site started giving her examples. Another chapter president with a remote site started chiming in as well. And she goes, "Well, I need more specific examples." And I said, "Ma'am, if you would like, I would be more than happy to advertise your name and email and have folks email you directly about their issues with this training." For some reason, she didn't want to do that. Then they said, "Okay, we're going to, we'll collate. Can somebody else here collate this, and then send it to me?" And somebody else, a very, very nice person on the other side, said, "Yeah, just send me the issues and I'll collate them and send them to you." That is stepping right in front of a bus to do this. But by golly, we'll give him all those examples. But it's truly been horrible, and that's just, to me, an indicator of the problems that we have many times with IRS training. And I'm seeing more and more that they're trying to fix this, but it's in fits and starts in different places. Some, it's like a step forward here in this division and 3 steps back in this division. So there needs to be some more consistency, some more attention paid to it. And to be honest, there's going to be some short-term pain to get training where it needs to be. We need to have these people, that are doing the good work, the actual work they need to do. They're going to need to be, if they are willing to do some training for folks, so we can try and get everybody skilled up. A rising tide lifts all boats. Very old saying. If we have these folks who are able to pitch in and do this, that are given the time and the opportunity to do it, I think we can. But the IRS as management has got to let them do that. So like I said, this is just a microcosm of the issues that we're having in training, and how serious that NTU knows it is, views it, and takes action.
I worked in the examination division for several years before I went into what we call toll free then, which was answering the phone calls. And when I worked at Exam, what I found is that Exam knew that when they had a big hire, whether it was the old tax auditors, now tax compliance officers, or revenue agents, I think they did the same in collection. I just wasn't as closely aligned with them. But anytime there was a large hire, they knew production was going to be hurt, because their best people were going to be out there, number one, doing the instructing in the classroom. Then number two, they're going to need experienced coaches to keep these people up and moving and answer their questions and to shepherd them through the first phase of their working there. I know how much I respected and called on my coach when I was new and toll free, for example. And IRS had great training, like the mid 1980s when I came in. It was known throughout the government as having one of the best training programs in all of government, and was on par with a lot of private sector training programs. Something happened, Duncan. I don't know what it was, but there was a shift in the management, how should I put it? The management focus. And all of a sudden, the training just didn't seem to have the emphasis it had before. And I really wonder if perhaps because this is the first time Accounts Management Taxpayer Services has ever tried to do this, they had no idea what they were getting into, didn't realize that to train these people, it's fine, but you're going to have to take productive people offline to get that training done. I wonder if the management just didn't understand what they were getting into.
And I think that happens a lot. And I think, where you talk about there isn't as much emphasis on training, I think it was almost that up until the last couple of years, we really haven't been able to do these big mass hires. Once we got the funding from the IRA, that we were able to start doing these big hires, then they planned for training, but didn't realize, I don't think, how much people would need to get them up to a certain level. And this, again, is all divisions. And so now that they've started figuring that out, they're running behind the eight ball. I just think it's I don't think there's any evil intent on management's part. I think, everybody from Danny Werfel on down understands that training is always an issue, has been an issue for decades, and is continuing to be one, and that they need to attack it, and to their credit, they're trying to do some different things. But again, like I said, in certain divisions, it's one step forward, and others, it's two steps back. And unfortunately, from everything I've seen, heard, and witnessed myself, it's two steps backwards in this particular training, for paper training for folks on the phones.
I want to just one other issue before we wrap this up. I think there was a great program that was proposed called phased retirement. I remember one of my employees, when I was a manager, wanted to kind of ease into retirement, still work, but the system, the way it was set up, is such that she would be heavily penalized if she did that with her retirement. And once I asked her to have somebody run the numbers for her, she called me the next day and said, "I'm retiring. I just can't do the phased retirement." And I can't blame her. I would have loved to have had her as a manager. She was a model employee. Would have loved to have had her so long. She wanted to stay longer, but there was no system that encouraged her to do that. We've been working on doing that. NTU's been a partner in getting that done, but we've got problems there, and it goes back a while. We're trying to get it fixed. Give us an update on this whole phased retirement program.
Yeah, this is one of those things, again, that was a great idea. Okay, let's do this. We'll have folks that could retire, not let the institutional knowledge walk out the door, have them mentor folks. But the program was in fits and starts, didn't really get started. There were obvious holes in it. Some people were resistant. Some in leadership were resistant to doing it because, well, I don't want to take them to do mentoring work when they're doing such great work. They're closing cases for me or answering phone calls or whatever it is. So as you said, then that just drives people to say, okay, I'll just plain retire instead of phase retirement. Well, they NTU and IRS have really been working on this, and next week you should start seeing some communications about how you can apply for phase retirement, what the parameters of it are. It used to be like 100%, and now it's going to be a variance between 20 and 100% on how much you want to mentor, how much you want to do your regular casework, that sort of thing. One of the things that's going to be that has not changed is you still have to be eligible for an immediate retirement to do this, which means either 30 years at your minimum retirement age, 20 years at age 60, or at least 5 years at age 62. So if you meet those qualifiers and you're thinking about retiring, but you don't really want to retire, this phased retirement might be something that be right up your alley. So, like I said, more information on this will be coming out through the NTU and IRS channels next week.
Okay, real quick update on we have I know a certain number of people in our audience who are looking at retiring soon. We were looking at the OPM retirement backlog statistics. It looks like for the second month in a row, there's been a growth in the backlog, up 3% from the previous month in July. Now, it should be noted that even though there's been an uptick, it's really funny. In May, everything looked great. In August, things are up a little bit. But keep in mind, as we understand it, the average time it takes now for OPM to process a retirement is 65 days. Historically, that's still pretty good. So people need to know, because you're going to get that temporary retirement amount way below what you'll be getting while the process goes on. So if it's 2 or 3 months, just plan that you're going to get less in your retirement for 2 or 3 months after you retire, and it shouldn't impact people's. Hopefully, if you planned well, it should not impact your decision to retire. So, any quick thoughts on that, Duncan?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the main point right there. Is have a nest egg to see you through until they've got your full retirement payments to you, because it could be as you said, 65 is an average, so it could be a while. So just make sure that you plan for that financially.
Yeah, when I retired, it was more than 65 months, just so you know. I had to wait longer than that. So I hate the fact that anybody has to wait, but it's not historically as bad as it may seem. Okay, Duncan, your final comment.
My final comment is a very personal one. Had some time off with family, which I greatly enjoyed last week. And I have to give a shout out to an awesome lady who on Monday it'll be our first anniversary. And just wanted to say, that as they like to say in football, I outkicked my coverage. My wife Kim is absolutely awesome, and I am, for an old dog, I am so lucky to have found her late in life, and really looking forward to celebrating many more years with her.
Well, 1 year anniversary. I didn't realize it was come up that soon. So congratulations to you and Kim for 1 year of wedded bliss. That's terrific news. My final comment is a little on the oddball side. OpenAI is a company owned by Microsoft, and they run ChatGPT. Now, OpenAI issued this statement recently. OpenAI is expressing concerns about this is from the statement, potential emotional reliance of users on their new ChatGPT voice mode. Now, it very closely mimics a human speech pattern. So if you're talking to this GPT chat thing, AI, you may think you're speaking to a human being. They try to make it that way. Well, now the company has raised concerns about the possibility of users forming emotional bonds with the AI, potentially leading to a reduced need for human interaction. Microsoft says they fear that this could impact healthy relationships, human to human, and lead to an over-reliance on AI given its potential for errors. I saw a CNN story where some college student they talked to, basically her best friend was artificial intelligence. Duncan, this is what you and I saw when we were kids in science fiction.
Yep. Very scary.
So just be aware. Don't, there are people who substitute artificial intelligence for human interaction. I don't know what to say about that, except to say we thank you for joining us on the Chapter 49 podcast. Duncan Giles, thank you for joining us as well. We thank you for being with us and giving some of your valuable time to our podcast. Duncan and I certainly do enjoy providing it to you. We take the time for that reason. So in the meantime, please be safe and be kind.